Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Everyone, and welcome back to the Parenting 411 podcast. Today, I am super thrilled to have an amazing guest with us, Chelsey Goodan, the author of the much anticipated book, Underestimated: The Wisdom and Power of Teenage Girls. Chelsey isn't just an author, she is a powerhouse in the world of youth mentorship and gender justice. For 16 years, she's been an academic tutor and mentor focusing on empowering young girls. She's a go-to speaker on gender justice. She runs workshops and coaches parents on connecting with their daughters. Now, as the mentorship director of Democracy, she's inspiring the next generation of female leaders. And the activist cartel, she has been driving political and social action for gender and racial equity. So she's really making waves, basically. So today we're going to dive deep into the world of teenage girls, a topic Chelsey knows inside out. We'll explore how society can underestimate these young powerhouses and the impact this has on their lives. From discussing big feelings to tackling the complexities of parent-teen relationships, Chelsey's insights are bound to shed some new light on these amazing young individuals. So we're going to also touch on how teenage girls navigate the tricky waters of sexuality, friendship, perfectionism, and just the relentless pursuit of likability. So let's kick off this exciting conversation with Chelsey Goodan. Chelsey, welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast.
Thank you. I couldn't be happier to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's just start off with the title of the book, Underestimated. How do you think parents and society are underestimating teen girls?
Well, first of all, teenage girls are so much smarter than we think they are. And when I first started writing this book, I asked girls, well, if you could tell adults and parents anything, what would you want to say? And I got a resounding answer of, we're so much smarter than you think we are. And that has been my experience. I have found that society, parents, adults, teachers often minimize or dismiss or squash girls as dramatic or emotional or crazy, and we kind of write them off as this time of their life where they're just figuring things out. But the truth is, they see things so much more insightfully. They have a lot to say about it, and if we ask the right questions and listen deeply with respect, they open up in a way that I think their solutions for our world are quite grand, and that's where we're underestimating. They actually see a great world that we could be listening to their solutions more deeply.
And, tell us a little bit about your background and the work that you do, because I'm sure that parents are really mystified at how in the world you have been able to get girls to open up to you, be vulnerable, and really share their thoughts with you.
Right. So as a tutor, and I have been able to enter definitely a rare space that I have not found parents are actually invited into. And that's kind of the idea behind the book, is I'm sharing like, hey, I was invited into this rare space of trust and vulnerability with teenage girls. And this is what I've learned. And this is what they want to say to the world. And so often I'm trying to work as that portal, that microphone for their voices. And how I've gotten to open them to open up has a lot to do with meeting them exactly where they're at, letting them know that they have nothing to prove to me, that I will not be judging them in any way, shape, or form, and that their answers, whatever their pure, honest answer is awesome. And that it permits them to really get in tune with a radical honesty. I create definitely a radical honesty space that I think creates psychological safety and emotional safety in a way that they don't feel judged. They feel like they can just be their weird, funny, silly self, or maybe not have every answer correct, or they can make mistakes. And I'm still like, cool, good thought, interesting. And we just expand it and keep asking questions from there.
Now, you mentioned a little earlier about how many people have this perception of, girls as being very dramatic and it's just gets to be a lot of work, especially when they're teenagers. And, I always joke because I have twin sons, but prior to my sons being born, I was a godmother, and I have three godsons. And so then and it's time for me to have my own children, I had two boys as well. And I said, God must God must know that I can't handle girls or something. I mean, I just didn't between the godchildren and my actual children, I didn't get any girls. So I said, maybe it's because I wouldn't be able to handle the drama. See, that's me speaking, not really knowing what it's like to to parent a girl. So, that's, very much the way society looks at them. They have these big feelings. And so, talk about that. And does it
Yeah,
ring
right.
true?
Yes. So I have come to love the drama and revere it as actually much more an indication of our humanity and actually a much more pure
Mm,
expression of our humanity. Whereas as adults, we've learned to really contain and bottle and mute so many parts of ourselves. And there's
mhm,
something really wonderful about a girl just sharing her feelings in the
mhm,
moment. And I
mhm,
believe that adults have big feelings too. We have just
mhm,
learned how to mute them, and there can be good parts and bad parts to that.
mhm,
It's not that we have it all figured out and the teenage girls are just a mess over there. That's just not the
mhm,
case. And I
mhm,
found that them just being able to express their big feelings and me just being like, yeah, that sucks. And that's
mhm,
it. And just
mhm,
validate where they're at that day.
mhm,
There's a big weight that lifts off their shoulders, and that's the exchange that does need to happen potentially more in adulthood too. Maybe we all could be listening to each other with more just like, yeah, that sucks, and let
mhm,
it out, vent, go ahead. And because I find that when you allow a teenage girl space to vent, then it's out of her and it's not like she's over there swirling about in some unnecessary drama. It was
mhm.
just a natural human inclination she had to share her feelings. She just needed a safe space to do it.
Right, right. And definitely when I was growing up, no crying, don't cry, don't let anybody see you cry, and don't whine. I mean, it was considered whining when you were expressing your feelings, these big feelings a lot of the times. And yeah, and consequently, I struggled with that a little bit as well. I think I've done a lot better than parents of my parents previous generation of parents in listening to my children and trying to hear that out. I mean, they're 24 now. They may have a different idea, but they don't know how far I've come compared to the adults, the
Of
adults that
course.
I grew up around. And I mean, love my parents, but yeah, they didn't. I didn't have a lot of space to complain and really emote like that. I really
Yeah,
didn't.
so
It was like
often
a sign of weakness.
100%. And I think your experience is really common. And you're right, each generation evolves as we kind of start learning more about this. And, so many girls, they tell me how tired they are of just adults trying to fix their
Right.
feelings or immediately slap positivity on it. Like, oh, well, it's not so bad because of this.
Yeah.
And really, when you try to slap positivity on a girl's angsty feelings, it's really about your discomfort with the feelings and not being able to hold space for like, oh, your daughter may just not be in a good place in this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it turns out humans do have up and down moments. And
Mm-hmm.
so often when we want to just immediately make it positive or immediately fix it for them, we just get stuck in this teaching mode, which teenage girls perceive as critique, like they're constantly being critiqued and judged,
Sure.
and who
Mm-hmm.
their authentic self isn't good enough. And so it
Mm-hmm.
really ends up shutting down a lot of really natural, beautiful expression.
Right, right. And I even examined, some of my friendships, even as an adult. I say, yeah, sometimes I do that when uh, a friend presents some challenging situation. I do try to figure out how to make it positive. Well, at least this, or,
That well, one
hopefully that.
technique. Yeah, totally. Well, one technique I often use with both girls and friends and my husband, literally everyone in my life, I say before, as they kind of get started sharing, I'm like, wait, do you want me to just listen right now? Or do you want me to give thoughts on this? What do you
Hmm.
actually need right now? Do you just want comfort? And
Right.
that sets up such a nice dynamic because usually, I mean, oftentimes the girl is just like, yeah, can you just listen? And I'm like, great, done. And it's actually a lot easier for a parent, than actually
Yes.
worrying and stressing about fixing it for her.
Now, throughout the book, you sprinkle in some of your own experiences as a teenager. So, tell us a little bit about that, your what you were like, but then also how your experiences shaped this work that you're doing now.
Well, I think that uh the book has healed my inner teenage girl also.
Okay.
And I have a
Okay.
lot of adult women now who've read it who feel the same way, who don't necessarily have children and are like, "Oh, this was more about my own healing because I found that those wounds that we have that we carry into adulthood often started in our teenage years, whether it's self-doubt, perfectionism, people pleasing. We set up patterns." And so I certainly sprinkle in stories about my own journey of people pleasing and perfectionism and just, normal life chaos. My parents got divorced and so on. And me trying to be the stabilizing force of as long as I'm good enough and I get straight A's, then everyone will be happy with me and everything will be okay. And I have found that to be so common working with teenage girls that they think if they just get perfect grades, then everyone will like them and then their parents will be proud of them. And these aren't things that are overtly said to them.
Hmm.
Everybody's doing the best they can, and we all want girls to succeed academically and so on. But we are messaging to them a need to be perfect. And I experienced
Hmm.
that. And it wasn't until, I hit 20s and later that I started realizing that life is hard and that you can't do everything perfectly. And you need tools, resilience tools to weather those moments.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, so much of what you're talking about, I didn't come to learn this stuff until much later because I just didn't grow up being encouraged to share some of these emotions and push back. Because now, I mean, as the years have gone on, from my 20s on, I have been more inclined to say, why are you talking to me like that? What?
Yeah, nice. Good
you
for
know
you.
Right. But, I don't do it all the time. I mostly, well, I'm a pretty easygoing, low-key person. I don't have a lot of complaints. But then when I do, people are like, wow, she's angry or whatever. And it's really just a matter of me saying, no, I don't like this. I don't like what you're speaking to me, or I don't like what just happened. And and I'm getting more comfortable with it. But like I say, I'm well into adulthood and still and excuse me, still wrestling with these things. So it's
Oh,
great if we can start off with our girls as
yeah,
they're
I'm so
growing
happy
up.
to hear. Yeah, I'm so happy
Hmm.
to hear that you've been finding that voice. I feel like it's a
Hmm.
really long journey for a lot of women, and
Hmm.
that it's a woman thing too. Like, a woman being quote unquote angry or displeasing. Like, we haven't been given a lot of space
To
to
do that.
express that
Exactly.
societally, right? Like, we get
Right.
written off right away as a bitch or whatever people want to say, and I will, but whereas boys, honestly, men and boys, they can be in a mood, they can be angry. It's no big deal. No one thinks that's their personality, you know.
Right, right. And speaking of societal expectations, and of course, the expectations that parents have, what heard through the book was that a lot of girls just don't feel like they can have a lot of say. And, I want you to talk about what girls say about that. And, I was really taken aback, by your research where you talked about how that there's no difference between girls and boys' confidence level until age 8, I believe. And
Yeah.
then there's really a crazy shift. And so between ages 8 and 14, a girl's confidence drops by 30%.
Yeah. Isn't that
And
wild?
yeah, yeah, that's really amazing. So talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and it doesn't drop for boys.
Right.
And I will say, 8 to 14 is where they really start hearing societal messages for sure, whether
Hmm.
it is the media. But I feel like, too, that is when girls hit like there's a lot more focus on their grades or their looks or there's a lot more of shoulds coming at them. Whereas when they were more of a child, they can be a little more free. There's a lot of talk too about girls not being bossy, right? Or not being, a lot of the girls talk to me about how scared they are of being considered cocky and not humble. And that's really holds them back because they're just trying to make sure that they're not taking up too much space. Everyone's cool. Everyone's good around them and happy. And what ends up happening is it limits their voice, right? Like they don't end up speaking up for their needs. They don't end up saying, hey, I like this. I don't like this. Exactly kind of what you're talking about. And it's real subtle. And if you don't feel like you can speak up and use your voice, then that affects your confidence. It affects who you think you can be in the world. And I want to bring attention to the subtlety of it because I know parents are aware of making sure girls are confident. Like I know we all want that collectively, but just kind of slapping a big well, just be confident doesn't really work. It's a lot more subtle messaging, which is what I try to address in the book for sure.
And I believe there was one girl in your book that said, and this is a quote, when you're a little girl, everyone is telling you not to be bossy or cocky. So you learn to be self-deprecating and then you internalize it and it sticks. And that's definitely a feeling I had. But the funny thing is, I'm still very close friends with my two oldest friends. One friend I met, I was 8 months old when she was born. And my other friend, dear friend, we met in first grade. And so she back then, everybody thought she was bossy. Like even when she came over to our house, my brother perceived her as bossy or whatever. And she kind of stood out in that space because, we were all socialized to be quiet and all of that, but she's never been like that. And, I admire that in her. I mean, and even, that's carried on, to this day. She just has always spoken up for herself, but it's just funny how, of course, obviously that works well for her today in her career and her relationships. But just imagine if that light had really been dimmed back when she was younger. I mean, I really reading this book made me really have new admiration for the way she was able to break through that. And she's one of my only friends that, my contemporaries that is like that, despite the way we were all socialized.
Yeah, I certainly have wounds around being called bossy, and I had to unpack those and heal them and find my own, because I have a pretty big, bold voice naturally. And so I had to figure out how that worked for me. And, when I often try to use, a lot of people, a parent might be like, well, it's gotten really out of control, and it's like, I like to focus on an action rather than a character trait of who you are. So it's like, maybe you tell a girl oh, well, you kind of demanded that. You were demanding, which is just an action.
Sure.
Rather than her whole personality and persona being a bossy person, right? Then she internalizes that. And so then she just understands communication patterns, right? It's just a communication situation.
We'll be right back after this. If you're looking to reach a massive audience of parents and caregivers, then look no further than Pro Picks by the Parenting 411, the ultimate marketing program designed to skyrocket your brand to new heights. With Pro Picks, we've created 3 incredible packages to suit your marketing needs and budget. So let's take a look. First up is our social starter package. You'll receive a stunning graphic promo piece, plus we'll also feature your brand on the Parenting 411 Instagram page. It's the perfect way to make a memorable first impression and get parents buzzing about your business. Now, if you're ready to level up, our Parenting Pro package is where it's at. You'll enjoy all the benefits of the social starter package, plus more awesome benefits, including exposure on the Parenting 411 podcast, which reaches parents in more than 22 countries each week. But wait, there's more. For those seeking the pinnacle of marketing power, our Elite Exposure package is the way to go. You'll get even more exposure across our platform, including thousands of followers and connections on LinkedIn. Get ready to dominate the airwaves and establish yourself as the go-to resource for families everywhere. Take advantage of Pro Picks by the Parenting 411 today and unlock unparalleled marketing opportunities for your business. But I should tell you that prices are set to increase on November 1st, so act now. Pro Picks by the Parenting 411 is your passport to the hearts and minds of parents. Visit ProPicksbyP411.com. Join us today and watch the magic happen. And we're back with the Parenting 411. Now, I liked your chapter about radical honesty too, because it's particularly with girls and women, because we've been told that we can't express these emotions and can't always call things as we see it because it's just not what girls do. We do become adults who are uncomfortable when other people do it. And so, and of course, in this case, teenage girls are being so honest because I didn't have the ability. I still don't do it. How dare you do it is what I think is happening.
Yeah, I know. And radical honesty is the starting point. I mean, that's how, back to your first initial question, how do I get in there with the girls? I am so honest with them, and in that chapter, I know I tell them, like, you're never going to use this math that we're working on, right?
Oh,
Like,
right,
you're never
right,
going to use
right.
it in life. And they're always like, wait, what? And I'm like, I can't believe that I'm telling them that. Here we are working endlessly on the math problem. And I'm like, oh, I assure you, you're never going to use how to factor a quadratic in your adult life. And they're like, can't believe I'm being so real with them. And when you set that type of foundation, then they feel safe to say what's actually on their mind. And the closer and closer you can get to your honest expression, I think the closer you get to your authenticity, like your actual when you feel like fully yourself and who you want to be in the world. But it's a practice. It takes a while to take all those other voices away and find your radical honesty voice. And it takes people around you also being really honest.
Right, right. I mean, it's just also about that radical honesty also applies to how you engage with people, like when people make requests of you or things like that, and it's something that you really don't have time for. It's a favor or it's a task or something, and you're like, you really don't have time for it. But you don't want to turn people down, and just being able to say, no, I'm not going to be able to have time for that, or that's not something I want to do. I mean, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
And I still kind of have to work on that, but it really is freeing. But
Well, freeing is the word, right?
Mhm.
Freeing is the key word. My last chapter is themed liberation, right? I
Right.
think that so much is of the book, every single thing I bring up is tied to a feeling of feeling free. And I
Right.
think too, when you feel like you can be yourself, you can be honest, that's a feeling of freedom for sure.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But I admire that you've been finding your no, right? Like that's really hard for women. And I found too, you don't need to explain yourself. Just say, I can't
Yes.
do it. You don't have to send
Yes.
a long email, and I like to also then when women do give me a no and friends, I'm like, hey, thank you for respecting your needs. I'm like, thank you
Right.
for telling me your truth. I try to
Right.
affirm that big move they just made, which was hard for the women to say no.
And it's funny, this conversation is really reminding me of something I saw. I guess it was a YouTube video. Are you familiar with Quinta Brunson on Abbott
Yeah, yeah,
Elementary?
yeah.
Well, before she became famous, she used to do these videos, and I forget the name of that platform that she was on. But there's this scenario where they're in the office, and one of the colleagues is having a party that weekend, and everybody, he tells everybody about him having this party, and expectation is that everyone's going. And so, her character's like, no, I'm not going to be able to go. And so the different ones are saying, oh, it must be because you have something to do. You have something. She's like, no, I'm just not going to be going. And then someone else said, oh, I mean, do you have somebody coming into town? That's right. I remember you said, your family was coming into town. You weren't going to be. no, I'm just not going to be going. I mean, and they go through all of these exchanges, like, how can you not be going? He's having a party, therefore you're going. And I love it. I fell in love with her, and then I started watching everything. But yeah, that's kind of another example where you're just expected to go along with everybody else, regardless of how you feel. And you have to, if you do say no, then you have to have a very good reason that is acceptable to everyone around you before you can do that.
Right, totally. Yeah, it's such a good example.
So let's hop to another hot button issue with parents, and that's sex. So talk about how judgment and control kind of create shame in the discussion about sex when it comes to parents and hearing and understanding the voices of their girls.
Right. I know. I'm stepping into some big territory here because I have been a person invited into these spaces by girls because I'm oftentimes the only adult that they feel like they can talk about sex with. And it comes
Mhm,
back a little bit to radical honesty, right? Like they know I'm going to be real with them about it and not come at them with an agenda of what I
mhm,
think they should be doing, right? And
mhm,
maybe a parent does have an idea of something they think their daughter should be doing. And
mhm,
it's not that I'm even trying to dismiss that need of the parent, but what I am saying is you're not going to get anywhere with your daughter and getting her
mhm,
to open up and connect and talk about this with you if you come at her with that should and that agenda in her face in any way, shape, or form. And
mhm,
because she will feel it, she will sniff it out,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And so, and talking like sex education is so vital right now, and schools aren't supporting it in a big way. So yes, parent conversations are a big area. Other ways, where is she going to learn it, right? Like from friends that don't have the same education or
Mhm,
uh, uh, and the internet. So these these moments, truly releasing your agenda around it is first step, and
mhm,
truly trying to meet her where she's at with open, loving curiosity. That's it.
mhm,
And it
mhm,
takes a really chill tone and a really like, oh, cool. Okay, great. And not pushing ever into pushing too hard. And I find that girls' concerns around sex, you're so right. It's so much about shame because
mhm,
whether it's a dress code at a school, like so often if their bra strap is showing, oh my gosh, the endless stories I have of girls being shamed into, wearing a sweater on a hot day and all these things that we think we're protecting them, but instead we do really harsh damage to
mhm,
their
mhm,
relationship to their body, their relationship to like, oh, I guess I'm only valued as something that turns on boys, right? Like
right.
that, and we're kind of teaching them through our fear of their
Mhm,
sexuality that
mhm,
something is bad about them, that they are a threat, that they are that these messages that they feel so judged. Also, that if they want to flirt with a boy, right? Like all of a sudden they're
mhm,
considered a slut, or they get all these names, and it's okay for a girl to flirt with a crush, right? Like
mhm,
it's interesting how much story we put on it for them,
mhm,
and so then they don't feel safe with expressing it, and it gets
mhm.
really confusing. We have a lot of wounds around it that again carry us into adulthood and womanhood. I feel like all the women I know as adults are still unwrapping a lot of sexual shame and judgment and trying to figure out what that baggage is, and so yeah, I mean, feel free to ask a more specific question. I'm just trying to touch on a lot of different aspects. This is a huge conversation.
Right, right. And what are some steps parents can take in talking about sex with their children? And
Right. So I
should
think
they
one
initiate it, whether it's initiating it or responding to questions that they ask?
It's a great question. So I would say starting early on in life, it's good to also not be judging other
Mhm,
girls and women's sexuality around a
mm,
girl because she's going to hear
okay,
you doing that.
okay.
And then she's going to know, oh, this isn't a safe place. So if you're
Mhm,
a mom that's like, oh, that girl looks like a tramp, like I assure you, your teenage girl heard you say that and
mm,
is registering it, right? So how you speak about yourself, how you speak about the world, she's going to hear it and already start determining if you're a safe person to talk about these things with. And
okay.
then next, I would say honestly, watching a TV show with a girl, like finding a TV show you both can watch together, is a really good entry point into, your, because a lot of the teen shows have these types of themes come up, and then you just ask a question and you're just like, oh, what do you think of that? And you do it in a super chill way. Again, truly in your heart, no agenda. You're like, what do you think of her dating that guy? Do you think he treated her well? And then they're
Mhm.
like, oh, well, I think this. And you just you can open up little portals that way, right?
Mhm.
In the book, I give the example of talking about consent because only 11 states in their sex education curriculum
Oh, yeah.
require that they teach consent, which is wild and very much explains a lot of our sexual violence epidemic.
Yes.
And and so I think that's a cool way to kind of bring it up. Like, hey, did you know that sex education programs, and bring up that statistic? And girls are often really into talking about sexual violence and sexual assault. Like, actually, that's a topic that they feel a little crazy that no one's talking about it. And they
Mhm.
respect that if their parent is respecting to talk to them about it, and they
Mhm.
think, okay, and it's a more intellectual conversation. It's not about their personal sex life.
Mhm.
And then they feel respected. They feel like you're on her team. You are always like, oh my gosh, that's awful that they're not teaching consent. You always make sure it sounds like you are on her team and not
Okay.
questioning her, because
Okay.
they think everyone is on a boys' team in general and that everything is
Mhm.
a girl's fault. That is
Right.
how society has told them. It's how our just natural socialization tends to communicate to them. Boys through the media are permission to pursue things like pleasure, and it's no big deal, right? Whereas
Mhm.
a girl pursuing pleasure, that is like a radical idea
Right.
uh, for parents. And so
Mhm.
just even unpacking that for ourselves, just the gender double standards. Girls really want to talk about gender double standards as it pertains to sexuality. Um,
Mhm.
and these are just entry points that feel a little more intellectual.
Mhm.
And then they know you're on your team, they're on her team, that
Mhm.
it's a process. You do not just
Right.
say like, hey, let's sit down and have a sex talk. That's not usually the way.
Right. And it's not one talk, it's an ongoing conversation too,
Yeah.
where you just
Yeah.
add
And
on different elements over time.
yeah. And it's about them feeling safe that you are not going to judge them, which may
Right.
come a day where they share something with you that you don't support.
Right.
and and so I actually think the first time that happens is a really good moment to earn her trust. So even if you don't support it, sometimes I advise just roll with it. Like, be like,
Right.
okay, interesting. And because then that's a moment that she feels safe, she doesn't feel judged. And then when a bigger moment happens, she's going to feel like she can come to you, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Mhm.
earning, you're banking trust sometimes
Yes.
by
Yes.
keeping your mouth shut sometimes, which is so hard. But the girls,
Mhm.
they are smarter than you think they are. They are more responsible than you think they are. Um, and you have to have some trust. I always say, trust the girl. See what that feels like. Tell her you trust her, because she'll
Mhm.
take that really seriously, actually.
Mhm. Mhm. And, kind of there's another area too where parents are pretty nervous about how their children are going to turn out, like what they're going to grow up to be. So there's this push toward excellence and in the direction that parents think are excellent, versus what's in their hearts. So talk about that tension between perfection, being perfect, and then pursuing excellence. And then also in there, being true to yourself, like what you're really interested in, and,
Yeah.
versus what society or what your parents say you should pursue.
Yeah. It's such a good question. It brings together a lot of themes of the book. Because yes, we are parents put a big message on that onto girls. And so a story I can share is there's a story in the book, Marley, who was really good at volleyball, like a
Right.
champion volleyball player. And her mom was too. So her mom was thrilled that she was this amazing player, and she's making varsity as a junior, as a freshman. And everything about her life was volleyball, right? Like intense schedules and game schedules and club. And she's excellent at volleyball,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's excellence. And so often we just pursue things that we're good at because we're
Yep.
getting affirmed. And one day I decide, and I see her just being so stressed out. She's getting migraines, she's getting minor injuries. And so I just asked Marley one day, I was like, hey, do you like volleyball? And no
Mm.
one had ever asked her that, right? Like, she was
Hmm.
thrown by the question.
Right.
And she was like, "Well, I like that I'm good at it." And I was like, "Yeah, you are good at it, but I'm actually asking, like, does it make your heart happy? Do you like doing it?" And she said, she's like, "Well, I like bonding with my mom about it." I'm like, "Okay, so do you do it because it makes your mom happy?" And she looked at me and she was just like wide-eyed and she's like, "Oh, shit." She was like, "Oh, no." Because she realized what I was saying and she was realizing her own truth, and she ended up saying, "I don't like it, actually," and she never really gotten honest with herself about it.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Well, what would you wanna do? If you could do anything with your time, what would you do?" And it turns out she'd been doing sketches, like fashion sketches in her notebook on the bus to games, and I was like, "That looks amazing," and then I was like, "I know this sewing class over the weekend. Would you wanna do something like that?" She's, "Oh my gosh, if I could learn to sew, I could do this and I could," and she got so excited about it. And
Hmm.
so thankfully, we were able to bring our mom into the conversation. She was able to communicate her needs, her heart. It was a
Hmm.
process. And then, her mom wants her daughter to be happy ultimately, right? And
Hmm.
so what ended up happening is she quit volleyball, and honestly those migraines went away, all of her anxiety, like she had a physical response to just
Right.
actually spending her time doing something she loves, and she became excellent at doing these fashion and designs. And I actually have a lot of girls who are interested in fashion that parents often dismiss as like a silly career pursuit, and I am telling you, I have girls that are grown up now in their 20s with incredible high paying jobs in the fashion industry. They're not necessarily a designer, but there's all sorts of jobs in that world, and
Hmm.
it's fun. I found it's interesting how quick a parent might dismiss it, and
Hmm.
then when a girl though allows her authenticity to shine and her passion to shine, she steps into excellence and achieves a job that truly makes her happy. And there's always a job in your passion somewhere. That's what I
Hmm.
and what I've seen play out.
I was going to say, yeah. And if there isn't, create it for sure.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, parents, I talked a little bit about asking parents, worrying about the future. And that's the reason why they push girls and their children in general in certain directions that might go against really what the children are passionate about. But let's talk about worrying and how because even with teens, I know they worry a lot. I worried a lot. And you think that by doing that, I definitely, when you said in the book, worrying is perceived control, I was like, yeah, I absolutely thought that the things that I worried about, whatever it was, me dwelling on them, I really thought I had control or I was really doing something. So talk about how parents can reframe that.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a big question about life, right? How do we, that voice inside our head that loves to circle and spiral into worry? And uh okay, a parent worrying about a daughter, again, it kind of comes back to being really real with her
Mm.
and maybe even sharing that would be like, "Oh, well, the reason I'm trying to control you doing this is because I'm just worried about this playing out." And if you
Hmm.
girls can handle your honesty, and I
Right.
find the more honest you are with her about your own struggle or feelings rather than just kind of
Hmm.
pushing it on her,
Hmm.
um, the more she'll be like, "Oh, okay. I can see you're worried about that, but here's my thought on it." And I always say, ask a girl what you think the solution is. Actually
Yeah.
empower her to be part of the solution, part of the path forward, because by activating her agency, then
Mm.
there's no one is telling you what to do or what you should do. And so I first of all, I would say there's space for a parent to share it as framed as like, "I feel worried," right? Like share your own feelings.
Yes.
And then have a conversation with her with curiosity, with no
Hmm.
agenda again, right? And in terms of a girl struggling with worry, which of course is a huge thing and is very tied to self-doubt, and I talk about that in the self-doubt chapter. You know, I find it has a lot to do with us figuring out that kind of negative self-talk voice in our brain and
Hmm.
freeing up energy. First of all, deciding whose voice we're going to listen to. Are we going to listen to that mean voice? Are we going to find our true inner voice? And that takes some techniques, I talk about in the book. And oftentimes when I'll have a girl do tallies of how much she is worrying about something or beating herself up about something or having negative self-talk within a week. I'll say, "Hey, have it on your phone and tally every time that comes into your brain." And I
Mm-hmm.
just bring awareness to it. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she comes back to me the next week being like, "I had no idea how much I was doing this.
All
I'm
right.
so mean to myself." And I was like, "I
Mm.
know, right?" And sometimes that's all that needs to happen is just bringing awareness to how
Mm-hmm.
much energy and time we are wasting worrying, thinking
Right.
that we can control something. And bringing awareness is the first step, and
Mm-hmm.
then we move on from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We'll be right back after this. Are you a parent looking to unlock your potential in raising confident, capable, and courageous children? Well, look no further. Join us at the upcoming Parent and Purpose Summit Back to School Edition, where parenting experts from around the world will come together to share their wisdom and insights. I'm Carol Maletta, founder of the Parenting 411. This summit is your opportunity to gain essential skills and tools to become the parent you've always aspired to be. Over 5 incredible days, we'll dive deep into topics like positive discipline, effective communication, mental health, self-care, school readiness, and more. An attendee from our last summit told us, "This summit changed my parenting game. I feel more confident and connected with my children than ever before." So secure your seat at the Parent and Purpose Summit today. Visit parentandpurposesummit2023.com. That's parentandpurposesummit2023.com. And click the registration button to join us on this transformative journey. The Parent and Purpose Summit, where intentional parenting begins. And we're back with the Parenting 411. I also want to talk about a bit about something, because a lot of people, they think about Mean Girls and all of this other thing. And what I thought about as reading the book, I was like, they're not mean. They're just they want to be heard, and they may come off as angry or frustrated or dramatic, but it's because they're not being heard. They're not being taken seriously. Those kinds of things. And so actually, a lot of girls have good relationships with other girls. It's not quite as toxic as we think it is. So talk about that. I mean, like, what are you finding about that? Do you hear many mean girl stories from the teens that you're talking to?
It's such a good question. And your reflection of the book just now, I feel like it's the thesis of, girls not feeling heard and
Mm-hmm.
it's so great. And yes, I would say a massive shift has actually happened of girls supporting girls, women supporting women in the narrative.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Gen Z is different than past generations. We
Okay.
grew up under the idea that there was limited space at the table, that there was only one seat for the woman in the boardroom because there really only
Right.
was one woman there, right?
Okay.
We all thought we were competing against each other. And now slowly but surely more women have gotten into leadership roles and also Gen Z doesn't see it that way. They genuinely think they can sit at any table in a much bigger way. And so this whole idea of Mean Girls is not their natural core. I mean, girls amp each other up. They call it gassing each other up.
Okay.
They will do in comments on social media like, "Girls, you're so amazing." They are totally different. And
This
when I
is
do
good to
come upon,
hear.
oh yeah, it's so encouraging. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not cool, by the way, to be a mean girl anymore. It's cool to support girls. And
Okay.
I will say when I do come upon a mean girl moment, because we're all still messy humans, right? Like we're all still gonna mess up.
Right.
Um, when it does happen, what I
Mm-hmm.
do differently is I go again, come at with just curiosity and questions. I always say phrase everything is a question. And I say to her, I go, that girl who's being mean to her, I say, "Well, what do you think her home life is like?" And the girl will
Mm.
often reflect and be like, I've heard like her mom criticizes her all the time, or her dad's not around and he's kind of a jerk." And they tend to have an idea of these things. And I was like,
Okay.
"Gosh, doesn't that sound hard? And do
Mm.
you think she's okay?" And oftentimes they realize that she's functioning out of her own pain, right? Like when a
Mm-hmm.
girl is mean, she's dealing with something usually that's not
Mm,
good in her life, right? Girls are
mhm,
not innately mean. And
mhm.
I can't tell you how many people, when they heard I was writing this book, were like, oh my gosh, you're writing about teenage girls. They're so mean. And I was like,
Ah,
oh my gosh, they're not, that's not who they are at their core character. Like there
uh-huh.
are factors from the world that have put them in this situation. And so
Right.
when I help a girl understand that, maybe she's just getting bullied by somebody else, so therefore she's bullying someone out of her own pain. Girls
Mhm,
get that now. They understand they're into psychology, they're into mental health. I
mhm,
mean, they will talk to me much more deeper psychology concepts than I ever was at their age. And
mhm,
certainly Gen Z is very into mental health and psychology in a way that's very helpful. And they see how trauma cycles repeat. They'll even use words like trauma cycle. Like they're well aware of those types of things.
mhm, mhm. Now, another area that is really getting a lot of focus is social media and the impact on girls, body image and all of that stuff, and comparing themselves to. Do you see what do you see there in the
Right.
conversations with
So
the
it's a big
girls that you?
topic. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I have the media chapter in the book that
Mm-hmm.
addresses it. And I wish I could make the whole book. Obviously, I can't address everything in that chapter. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, social media is a hard terrain to navigate. I will
Mm-hmm.
always acknowledge parents' stress about it. That's real. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going anywhere. Social media is not going anywhere. So
Right.
we need tools in order to create media literacy for girls so they know
Mm-hmm.
how to encounter it, engage with it in a healthy way. And I find that adults and parents' fear of social media, kind of telling her that it's awful, that she should be scared of it, that it's hurting her, it's ruining her, which is often what she hears from the world, creates more fear and doesn't empower her to make smart choices on social media. So I will lean into those conversations in a big way and bring up accounts, social media accounts, and be like, well, what do you think of this? What do you think of that?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that girl posted that photo? Or do you think this is pretty? Or I'll just ask questions again with curiosity. And then I'll often get them following accounts that inspire me. I'll ask them what inspires them. And if you switch up a girl's social media feed and add, I mean, even 5 psychology or mental health accounts, it's game changing. I had the amount of girls I've had come back to me be like, talking about trauma responses, talking to me about, did you know there's a flight and freeze response, telling me about the different trauma responses because they
Right.
saw it on social media, right? On
Right. Right.
Instagram.
Right.
And so there's also a huge opportunity for them to be exposed to really interesting topics. And
Sure.
I girls, when they talk to me about beauty pressures or social pressures on social media,
Yeah.
I'm all about empowering them to make choices that feel healthy to them, right? So I'll be like, well, what do you think? Do you think you should do you think you should follow that account? Does it make you feel good? Do you
Mm,
think you should look like that? And then I make her generate the answers herself because that's when it sticks. Then she's
mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know what? I shouldn't look at that account, or I shouldn't. A lot of girls have put their phone down at night by choice, not with their parents yelling at them,
Good.
right? And it takes early engagement, I would say. Trying to do this once they're already 17 and kind of in the trenches is much harder. But
Mm-hmm.
when they first start, and telling a girl, you know what, I really trust that you are going to make smart and healthy decisions on social media. A
Right.
girl hears that and is like, oh, okay, my parent trusts me with this. Like, I need to be they want to know you think they're smart. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so then I find they make way smarter decisions when you
Mm-hmm.
tell them that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's, knowing that they have that trust is really empowering for them. And that also brings me to, this, it's in the title of your book, Power. And then as in our first conversation, you might remember that I told you that, um, initially I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a conversation about empowering, giving power to girls and whatever. I was like, no, you're talking about, hey, there is wisdom and power there. Let's um, let them use it. I mean, let's
Yes.
stand back and let them use it. I mean, give guidance and all of that. And so let's, talk about that because you said that society is afraid of teenage girls and people are only afraid of things that have power over them. And that's like such a strong statement. And so talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, the last chapter is power. And
Mm-hmm.
I think how we have characterized power as a society, right, which is often paired with domination, oppression, self-interest,
Mm-hmm.
wealth, physical strength. These ideas that are often masculine, like considered masculine, which is, oversimplification, but and those aren't innate qualities for a girl. And if anything, qualities like care,
Mm-hmm.
empathy, generosity, thoughtfulness. What if we instead thought of that as powerful, which it
Mm-hmm.
is powerful, we just
Sure.
haven't characterized that as a society that way. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very much a feminine leadership style that we have seen great success when women have been given an opportunity to lead with that rather than women trying to model men in power. We haven't seen like that hasn't felt as good to girls and
Mm-hmm.
women. And uh and so when we are uh, so what a girl hears as these natural qualities, this like love and generosity she has to make the world better, which is what I see across the board from teenage girls. Like their hearts are in the right place. They
Mm-hmm.
really want the world to be better
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make a difference. Like that's what they want to do in life. And when we tell when we kind of put a lot of fear on them in general, that their natural flow just gets squashed and
Mm-hmm.
they instead adopt what they see being quote unquote successful around them, which are these
Right.
ideas that are more like domination and self-interest and ego and so on. Um, so that's where, yeah, they have it already. Their natural inclinations are really positive and good, and that's what you're talking about we need to just let them have this type of power in the world.
Mm-hmm. 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 And make the impact. I mean, because we need all of those things that you just talked about that girls are good at. We need to have space for that. Um, so what are there any closing thoughts that you have that you want to make sure that parents understand about their girls and to get them out of that mode of underestimating the wisdom and power that their girls have?
Yeah. Well, just on a technique, like a tool, I just always want to make sure I offer a really practical tool. And in the back of the book, I have ways to expand conversations with teenage girls and any human being. And I just have a list of questions to
Mm-hmm.
understand them, to empower. And if I can leave parents with one thing, it would be to phrase everything as a question with a non-judgmental tone that
Mm-hmm.
truly in your heart is just curious about understanding and learning about this amazing girl in front of you. And
Mm-hmm.
she will feel that intention behind your behind those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when connection really starts happening. That's when opening up starts happening. That's when she feels safe to really start being herself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the starting point. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I would, I guess, leave it as the most important. And of course, there's a million different ways we could keep going, but I love this conversation so much.
Yes, me too. And so tell our parents, where can they get the book?
So it is out March 5th, publishing with Simon & Schuster and Gallery, and you can get it anywhere you want to buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, or your local independent bookstore is always a good idea. You
Mm-hmm.
can follow me on social media at Chelsey Goodan, where I will be posting, I'll be on a book tour, and I would
Mm-hmm.
love to meet you in any city that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, please get it. I honestly, it's not about selling books. It's about, to me, letting girls' voices have a moment to be heard in this world and so that
Mm-hmm.
they can step into their power. I mean, that is where my heart is right now, for sure.
Right. I mean, I'm just hoping that maybe some moms will have start with little book clubs
Yeah.
and
It's such a
you
good
read
book
this.
club book. Totally.
Right, right. I think it is. So that's what I hope to see. So Chelsey Goodan on all major social media platforms, you said.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. And can they get the book at a on your website or anything? Or
Yeah, the order link is at chelseygoodan.com.
okay,
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, why it's so good for book clubs is each chapter is a distinct issue or struggle that
true.
girls face. And we all, whether it is people pleasing, perfection, self-doubt, shame,
Mm-hmm.
they're really digestible, easy to read chapters that I have found spark great
Mm-hmm.
discussion about your own life, looking within your own inner teenager as well.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining me today, Chelsey. And I hope all of our listeners will run out and grab that book because it's very much about helping you to understand your teenage girl, but it's bound to make you think about yourself, think back to the way you grew up and how some of the ideas, some of the ways that you move in the world were shaped back then, and just really, hopefully you'll be able to realize the power and wisdom that you have that's just waiting to come out and make the impact that we're waiting for. I mean, if you have it, if you keep it inside, you're not blessing us with something that we were meant to receive. So please head out and get the book. As always, continue to follow the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And remember, it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be.